Okay, so we're spiritual beings in a physical body. Our thought creates reality, and we're all connected to other human beings. Now, I always start the video this way just in case someone hasn't tuned in before, shall we say. But I will say that I will just, as usual, I'll be haphazard and not so good on these things. But I would say that, you see, we are spiritual beings, human beings. All human beings are spiritual beings, okay? So if you're a human being, you're a spiritual being. Or at least that's what you were meant to be, in the sense that if you are a human being and you are of a spiritual nature in a way, and you take that to, you live that way in a way, and you take that to a high level, as high as you can. In other, look, put simply. See, it's really quite simple in a funny kind of way, which is why most of us bungle up our lives, because we don't realise how simple it is to keep on track, or to, shall we say, be the best that we can. We don't understand that that we are a spiritual being, that you're a human. If you're a human being, you're a spiritual being. If you think you're not a human being, then you're not a spiritual being. I'm not sure how we all manage all this, but most of us, you see, when I said we're a spiritual being in a physical body, most of us think that we're a physical being in a physical body, that it's just all physical. But it gets confusing in the sense, that's why I say that just all human beings are really spiritual beings. That's just putting it simply, because that way you don't have to then pretend that you're at some level that someone else isn't. Even though obviously some people are living as they are meant to, as a human being, better than others. I've said this before, and it gets hard for me to explain it, because I have, as you can imagine, I have more difficulty than most people with this myself. It's like you don't feel spiritual, and yet you should be. And you know that it's real. It's just that the physical defeats you, because we're in a matrix. And the matrix likes to keep you very physical, because when you are very physical, or centered on the physical only, or on non-spiritual way of looking at things, I guess I would have to say, I'm thinking back over my own life, because I realise that it doesn't always have to be, oh yes, about getting more goodies or about getting more money. It can be, but it can also just be being selfish to, as I've been in my life, to other human beings. In other words, to where and I always point the finger at the matrix, but because the matrix does set these things up. The matrix is our world is a set up world, so therefore it does set you up to be non-spiritual, because the matrix is non-spiritual. We are spiritual beings in a non-spiritual domain, in a non-spiritual, only physical, but essentially non-spiritual world. Of course, that, when I say that, it doesn't mean that there aren't spiritual human beings in it. That's what I'm trying to say, is that essentially human beings are put into, for whatever reason or why or what, that's for either another video or when I figure it out, or for you who might already know, So, because there'd be many ways of looking at these things depending on where you're coming from. And, I always say there's always two options to everything at least. And I'm one of those people that always sees at least those two or three options. So I do tend to let the matrix play me in that sense. But some people don't even see the two or three options. They just go totally with the matrix. At least I usually see somewhat the alternative view as well. But, like I say, that doesn't mean that, that will depend on your circumstance and what your vibration is at the time. In other words, if you're feeling, as I've said before, if you're feeling bad, it's very hard to be high spiritual or high spirited, if you want to look at it that way. They say high spirited, you're happy. Well, it's the same thing. It's all the same thing in a way, provided that you're not getting, as the matrix does, its high spirits or its sense of contentment at the human expense, if you follow, because it's a negative matrix that works against the spiritual human being, and this is also if human beings turn to that way of looking at things too, because because, as I say, we're spiritual beings, but we're in essentially non-spiritual domain now. For how long it's been like this, or whether it's always been like this, I can't say. Maybe I'll know that one day. It probably doesn't matter, because, like I say, in a funny kind of way, I think, I'm not feeling very good for this video today, so I'll probably be worse than ever. Some days I really get it. In other words, you really get it. It all clicks to where kind of, you just feel it, and you know that you're right in what you're saying, and you know that it is how it is. Other days I make a video with good intentions, but, because it's not clicking, because I know, I'll just say it as a fact. But it's better if I really know it and feel it when I'm saying it. And this is sometimes the case when you're making a video. It's like this because it's all frequency, vibration, and awareness of just realizing that it all fits. So that's why like today, I'm forcing myself to make the video, but it's not always coming. I'm almost like looking for the narrative, which is like the Matrix. That's the Matrix. The Matrix is all taking the narrative from a human. It's all about reading the lines as a script. It doesn't matter, because it's just a game for the Matrix. The Matrix, it's a game for the Matrix. So they take it serious, and they believe their own. Like, I've gone off track here again. See, look, I'll try to finish what I was trying to say. See, it's essential. See, although we're in a matrix, which is a technological, artificial construct, in a way, if you want to look at it that way. If you want to, as I've said before, if you want to take it that we're still in a real, natural, totally random Earth, you can do that if you want to. In my fantasy way of looking at it, I've gone into the science fiction realm to where I'm like, hey, because we use so much technology, therefore there must be more technology behind the curtain. Whereas if it was a totally natural realm, I'd say that whatever's behind the curtain, because there's always something behind the curtain in Wonderland, if you follow me, I would say that it would, you would still see it only as humans just trying to manipulate a few things that suit them in the world. And that would depend on how far the world, what sort of society we have, what sort of world we have. If we had no society, that sounds funny, I know, but society is also a construct, and it's of the matrix because it's an ordered kind of reality. Anything that has an order or a control to it, even if it's an agreed control, any agreement almost to where it's not just random. Things don't just fall. You know, you probably follow what I'm saying in a way, I hope, but I don't put these things very well. And either way, I'm reiterating pretty much what I've said probably umpteen times. So I shall try to say something new at least if I can, but I forget what I even said in the previous video, and the previous video was also deleted accidentally by myself again because I let the matrix sidetrack me and thought that I knew what I was doing. In other words, thought that I had already put the video centered, whereas I hadn't, and so I deleted it because I have to delete it to make another one to make more space on the phone. But either way, that is just, as I've said before, this is just advice really, and it's good advice, I think, even if we were living in a natural world where there was no matrix. That humans are meant to concentrate, and if they concentrate and are aware of what they're doing, it is better for them in many ways, I would say. But the matrix doesn't like concentration too much on the part of the human, because the matrix can only play the human when there's a lack of concentration, in a funny kind of way. That's why there are so many distractions. That's why the world is always trying to maneuver you into its reality. And a lot of people go there willingly because they like it, So there again, that's what I was just going to say. So it's still a decision, whether you make it consciously or unconsciously. That's why it's important to slow down, so you make the decisions slowly and you know what you're actually doing. Because, if you're in a matrix and there's a lot going on, the wind is blowing all over the place, as it is now, right now. The matrix god gets angry and the wind blows up, because that is an indication of showing the power and the anger. But still weary of how much destruction it causes. That didn't make any sense, but it feels like it when you listen to the wind sometimes. It doesn't seem like just a cooling wind. It does feel like it is a force in itself. Human beings are the only life force in the matrix, the only real life force in the matrix, in my fairyland way of looking at it, or in my view, whatever you like. I've done this before, and my own way of looking at things now is a lot different to how I used to, in the sense that I do place the spiritual human being, or any human being for that matter, even if they are possessed, which I touched on, and I've experienced it myself, and I see it in others, and it's a real phenomenon that I, not that long ago, would not have entertained that idea. Because the minute you step away from what you think you know, or what you think is real, and that is only based on what the Matrix gives you. The Matrix actually gives the human being back quite a lot. But we, and myself included in the past, would see things, and some of us see a little bit more than others. Even in the past, I might have seen some things or noticed some things that other people didn't notice, and vice versa too. And it really depends on what it is, whether it is going to be conducive to the Matrix being content, or whether it is going to anger the God entity or the Matrix, and you wouldn't know that yourself, because you wouldn't know that yourself. I look back now and I can sort of figure that out a little bit. That's only because the realization that you're in a matrix, and realizing a little bit more how it kind of operates, or how they want it to operate. Well, actually how it does operate, but it's also how it is chosen to operate. And it's essential for them, when I say them, I mean the Matrix God and its disciples, followers, those that are of the Matrix. But either way, I will touch on that if I can get my thoughts clear on it in a second. But either way, like I say, even though we're in a technological matrix, because it is a technological matrix, it is all technology, the God entity itself is technological in nature, in its You say, how do I know this? Well, I know it by the world. And I know it by what its disciples represent, just as a spiritual human being. If they are at a reasonable level, they would be pointing certain things out to me where I've gone wrong. They would show you how to get onto a higher spiritual level so that you can prosper. Just as the God entity wants itself and its kind, its disciples, its children, if you like. I don't know what words you would use to describe. It would vary. And human beings that, I don't quite understand if, the human beings that, shall we say, go for the technological God and technology. Are you going for both when you use the mobile phone as I'm using now? It's very debatable. But I would think there is a big difference between some and others. Everything is a varying degree, I would think. It's a bit like possession. You can be possessed a little. We've all been possessed a little in the past, and even on a daily basis, because even when you're aware, as I have shown you in past videos, even if you're aware of the situation and know that you are being played and know that you are being milked in a way for negative energy, for negative vibration, and that is to keep the matrix at the level that it is at. And I will have to probably delete this video because I realise I've gone off track. The point that I was going to make, it's gone from my mind now, but either way I'll try to get it back by just talking. The matrix is all technology. But if you don't think it is, that's okay too, but still bear with me, because if you think it's a natural world, it can still be a world that is a system of control, in the sense that, as a spiritual being, you could even just be being limited just by the people that you associate with, because of what we've discussed before, that a lot of human people are of the psychopathic narcissist. Most people are psychopathic narcissist, or maybe narcissistic psychopaths. I'm not sure. You can use many titles, and to be quite honest, just from my own experience and perspective, shall we say, you can't always, just as you can't tell how much someone is possessed, although you might get a good idea if it's extreme. But and it's the same with that. You can't tell how psychopathic someone is. They're only terms, they're labels that we try to use. I would say that I have known many in my life, and some are very, like I say, most are very covert. And when they're covert, there's something wrong, but it might take you like half a lifetime, as it did me, to even realise that those that were closest to me were like that, because they're a lot more covert. They don't, they don't show their true way of looking at you or anyone else directly to you. It will come out at times, and sometimes you will rationalise it too. You will, I know I did. I rationalised, even when I realised that I was dealing with negativity and I couldn't figure out why, I rationalised it. I saw logical reasons why the person behaved negatively towards me. And this was true, but also not entirely true. In other words, no, it was not entirely true. It made sense. It makes sense that if someone associates with someone else that's really negative and treating them badly, that they are going to feel less loving. Or if you've never experienced much love in your life, you're not going to be the most loving person. And this kind of makes sense. But it's not still always the true picture. It's not the whole picture always. I mean, you can have situations, where psychopathic narcissistic people, or psychopathic narcissists, as they're called, or whatever, can enjoy the company of fellow psychopathic narcissists. Even though but in this circumstance, they will then still need a third person that isn't of that to, to drain the negative energy, to get, to feed their kind of anger in a way. It's a bit, you'll have to look into these things for yourself. You'll have to look into these, and, if you haven't, you'll have to go into these, study this a little bit. You don't have to study it a real lot. You can just go on and find out what they are. And if, probably you would already know if you have people like this in your life, because like myself, you would wonder the why for a long time, but then you don't always put a name on it. But either way, I've gone off the track. I was supposed to be talking about spiritual human beings. But all I'm saying is that, there's, like I say, the world is not, even human beings can turn negative for various reasons. It doesn't matter what the reasons are for this video, but that can happen. And they can therefore then be disciples of the Matrix in a way. And they will work against human beings. They have to. The Matrix has to. The Matrix God and his disciples have to work against humans, because they need that negative energy themselves. They enjoy that negative energy. Human beings enjoy positive energy. They enjoy negative energy. That is natural for them. Why is another thing. You might have to go back to the garden, as I say. I'll maybe one day in my dreams do a decent video on that and get it figured out. But it's a fantasy. But it fits the scenario of this world. So because I don't personally have contact with these things, not at a face-to-face level, I see the results of them. It's like the wind out there. I can't see it, but I can see it moving the trees. I can see it causing damage sometimes. And I can feel the cold of it when I go out there, you see. So I don't need to put a name on that wind. I don't have to say that. I don't have to give that wind a name. It may have a name. It may, have its own name, but it may even have many names. But it may have a preference, but it doesn't matter. I can see the result, so I know it exists. Only by the results. Because even without information, the information will then be how you want to interpret it. Depending on what level you're at or whatever, I don't know. But, I made a mess of this video. We're spiritual beings, but we're in a technological domain, a technological earth. But even though we are in a technologically controlled world that we really have very little control over, we are the source and the centre of it, but we don't consciously, it's not our world in any real way, because we're at a very low level. We keep it going, but we keep it going at a low level. We are low frequency, and so we keep this low frequency technological domain going. That's putting it at a spiritual level, but it also could be at a physical level, because the human thought does create the reality. I'm not feeling it today, you see. Because the human being thought does create reality. Everything is frequency and vibration. We are, and so is this reality. Even in a natural world, if it was all natural, I only learned this a week ago, even though I've been saying all this stuff for 12 months in the videos. But I say a lot of things without full scientific evidence, because I tend to not be scientific, okay? I don't have that expertise or that education, even though I don't I don't consider education valuable, as you know. But, you know, let me say it this way. Look, we're spiritual beings in a technological domain that we have very little control over. But if we were at a higher spiritual level, we would probably have more control over the domain. But I was just going to say, yes, that a week ago I tried, it's hard. A week ago I was told, informed, whatever you like, and this is scientific though, even though I don't place much credence on science, because we live in a matrix, and the matrix is all about playing the human. So therefore, even if you get correct information or science, it's still going to be put to you to where you cannot make too much use of it. Because otherwise the matrix God and its disciples don't have as much, it's their domain, so they don't want a lesser, what they consider to be lesser, to have too much power in their technological controlled domain. If I'm making sense, I'm sure I'm not. I know my videos are fantasy, but sometimes they become fantastic and stupid. I know, but take it with a grain of salt if you will. But either way, in my way of looking at the fantasy technological world and spiritual human beings in this fantasy technological world, because it's fantasy if it's a game anyway, even though it's real, but it's not authentic. But either way, I've always said that we're meant to be in contact only with nature and other life forces. Nature is a life force just as human beings are a life force, because they're meant to be natural, or as they were originally, shall we say, which was natural. I'm guessing. I could be wrong because I can't remember. But that's what I think so, and it's what I like. Because even though I could like a lot of technology and could use it and, have not particularly went against it in my life, for me, forgetting even the spirituality, for me, if I had any intelligence at all, and I'm going to go into that too, I would still say that nature is best, that regardless of what benefit technology can be to you, I just feel that it is not really what we were meant to do. It's like going against everything that we know. It's going against everything that we are, even if we're different now. But it may not be the same for all. And this is the difficulty or the tricky part or the confusion of it, I would say, in this fantasy matrix world. Now, because we're spiritual beings but are in an artificial domain, I think I've said this before, even though this appears to be the case, and, I think a lot of people might even agree with that, even if they don't want to take it and go, might not go too much with the spiritual. I might say, well, whatever we are, we're human beings in a technological world now. Put simply, I always say I always take everything to the extreme to make a point, even though I also in myself do go with the fantasy of the extreme in many incidences I do. But, to make a point, you have to sometimes emphasize things a lot more and go a bit to the extreme anyway. So, you don't have to believe that yourself. You can take it much more simply, and you can even say that we're not in a matrix, even if you want to. I don't think you could seriously say that, but you could say we're in a natural world that is a society that has its rules, its regulations, its groups that control things and that tell you what is best for the community or for the world at large or whatever. I don't know. I'm just trying to find the words here. I'm not very, yeah, but we know that. But still, at a level of what you would call, I would say myself that this is how I see it now. But whether it's true for you, it may be true for other people, but they still may see it in a different light, because spirituality is often connected with different denominations and things. I steer away from all denominations. But that doesn't mean that within every denomination that is in this earth, that there isn't truth and that there isn't, a benefit to perhaps study some of these things or to know the information or to read their books, etc. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that I don't see one particular one as the all, or as having everything correct. And that's where people differ. That's why we have the separation with different people separating for that, I guess, and I can see why it happens too. But there's also very many common denominators, which is interesting too, and much that is probably valid. So that's why I say that maybe if we were at a better functioning level in a spiritual way, we would probably be able to pick what is correct out of everything that's on the earth, and even the denominations, the different philosophies, different different beliefs or whatever, different, But I try to keep it simple, so I just see it as, I see one controlling force in this earth, only in this earth domain, whatever that is, not, if we're in an earth domain, obviously there could be outside, but that is nothing to do with the matrix. The matrix is its own law, its own force in itself, its own life force. It's a technological life force. But for some reason, spiritual human beings, or just regular human beings even, are plonked into it. Whether we're plonked into it, whether things have changed over the many, many years, whether we're accidentally here. I always feel as though I'm accidentally here. But that's probably only because I can't cope with it, and because, I don't feel I have a purpose in it, even though I understand now that I must have something, because I'm in it, in the thick of it, and I see the results and the negativity of the matrix itself, and I see the anger of the God entity, and I see the confusion of its disciples and its representatives, and the mindset, which is largely shown, as I've said, through the disciples, depending on their degrees of importance, shall we say, maybe, in this earth. And that is largely how we see them, because the human being gives importance to some people or some beings over others. I'm not making sense here. But either way, it's still a spirit, even though it's a technological matrix. Because human beings are the life force of it, and are life, as opposed to technology. And because the matrix, although it is self-operating in a funny kind of way and is technologically controlled and is a technology, a machine, it's not a life force. It's a machine force. The matrix itself still appears, in my way of looking at it, and I could be wrong about this because it's my fantasy, although perhaps I should change it because it's not a very pleasant one, like I've gone into the darker horror fantasy, which I don't mind watching on the TV, as I said, but maybe it's you bring yourself down too, so that brings the frequency down. You live a negative life. It gets, perhaps you go over the border at some point. Could be my fault. I'm sure it is to some extent, because I do think that if, as I've said before, if you make the right life choices or the spiritually right life choices, that's what it comes down to now. I say that because it's not even a matter, if you can make a right life choice for the matrix. In other words, you can make a right life choice, or apparently at the time, for yourself, but often then you're making it totally for the matrix. If anything that destroys life, I would say now, anything that is negative against the life force, which is a human being, they are the life force of the matrix. They are the life force of everything. They're the only true life force. Then you have made a decision for the matrix indirectly, in a funny kind of way. This is what I now realise, and I've done that most of my life. So it's, so naturally then you're giving the matrix the upper hand. That's why I say, even though it's a technological domain, it's a technological matrix, human beings are the life force and they're meant to be spiritual. Human beings are just spiritual, okay? I don't know why I'm getting angry with myself, and I'm getting angry as I'm talking out, as if to say, do you get it? Do I get it? Do we get it? I don't know, because we don't really, in a way, and I know I don't. But human beings are just spiritual. That's what they are. It doesn't matter whether they believe in this or that. If they behave a certain way, then they become non-spiritual, and therefore they serve the matrix, and the matrix is non-spiritual, so the matrix will then take advantage and will bring you down. You might benefit in some ways temporarily. That's it's like the easy way out, as I've done. And you might think it doesn't matter because you say, hey, we live in a physical world, so okay, so I do a few things that are negative towards humans, but maybe it balances out. Maybe they're just as naughty as me, or maybe this and maybe that. It's only in your real deep, if you really look real deep, that you would probably say, hey, I think maybe this is wrong, but I can't help it. It serves me at the time, and hey, see, it's like the Matrix God in a way, and like the Matrix itself. It's very easy to just want to eliminate that which is a problem, or that which you see as a threat, or that which you see as, it doesn't matter why. because we are very much of the matrix, often even the reasons that we see something as better than us and therefore then we get, that is all the matrix. Anytime you look at, anyone or anything and see that person as somehow better than you or a threat or a problem, that is because the matrix has put that onto you. It's not a natural human thing, really, because all human beings are unique, so they should have no real reason. I mean, I still do it now, even though I know the matrix, because, mind you, that is the matrix too, because sometimes the matrix can bring you down to where you know that you are less, so then you do feel bad about yourself, and then you do compare with others, even at a physical level, and say, oh, well, look, I'm, I should be better than this. Or, it's not even comparing, but you do know that you are at your lowest level yourself, and you do get then distressed by that, especially if you know that it shouldn't be. Like sometimes if you do something wrong yourself, you can accept that. But when it's yourself and then it's also the matrix, like if I do something negative myself, or if I haven't looked after myself, I don't expect to feel 100%. But it's another thing when it's an opposing force that you have no control over, and also knowing that you should have control over that. So it's very frustrating. It's very frustrating. Yeah, but either way, as I've gone off there, yeah, like the, even low, we're in a technological matrix controlled and operated by a technologically based God entity that loves technology, that worships technology and is technology. Just as human beings should love being a human being and worship nature, and be in connection with nature, this entity is, its force of power is technology. You see, this is why I go the anti, for this reason, But even though this is the case, and the matrix is in 100% full technological swing, and endeavouring to swing even more, even though it probably isn't really totally necessary. But even though this is the case, my own observation or way of looking at it is still that the matrix itself has set up its own rules, and those rules, shall we say, still cannot override a spiritual human being 100%, I don't think. Not without the cooperation of the spiritual human being. A spiritual human being is above technology, even though technology dominates us now. I'm not sure if I'm putting this right. So therefore, a spiritual human being in a matrix, ruled by technology in many, many ways, and human beings operating through technology, or apparent human beings operating through technology in the sense that they appear to be the same as us. But at the same time, you must remember that, as I've said before, because you have the matrix God and his disciples, his representatives, the demigods of this world, those that we idolize and worship ourselves, that we follow, that we emulate, that we enjoy, even look up to, think are more human than us, in the sense that they might sing a beautiful song or something like this where you can't. But they are still of the matrix, because the matrix is a stage, that's right, and it chooses its own actors. It chooses its own actors from when they are first produced, shall we say, reproduced or whatever. And it doesn't usually choose the most spiritual human being, because the most spiritual human being should not, and usually doesn't, want to operate totally for the matrix or for technology. Now, this varies too. This is why I don't like making these videos, because the more little bits of tidbits of information that I receive make me realise that even some of my videos could be misconstrued, as I've said before. A bit like that person that said, I don't know who it was, when I first started making the videos, are you a Gnostic? And I'm like, I didn't answer, but I'm like, after the video was over, I'm like, I don't actually know what a Gnostic is. Sounds impressive, I think I might accept that, but no, I don't know what it is. But of course I do have a bit of an idea now what it is. And of course, I don't associate myself with any denominations, as I've said, on this earth matrix, nor with any philosophies, nor with any ideas of those. I'm not, even with ideas that were around thousands and thousands of years ago, however valid or however informative or however true they may appear to be to me, because I could see that there's much in these things. But, I really don't, because there are still aspects that I would, because I don't understand these things, I am skeptical of them. But all I can really reiterate over and over again, to the point of boredom and repetitiveness, is that anything that involves technology, I do not associate myself with in a video. Okay, that's all I can really say. And so if any, whether it be past or present, ideas or beliefs or I can't find the words, like to describe these kind of, I can't use the words to describe them. But like I say, I don't associate myself with them. I don't understand them enough to affiliate myself with them. And I suspect that many of them are part of advanced technology or some form of it. Anything that does not endorse the human being as being complete and the highest form of life, then I don't go with it, even though there could be 99% really good stuff there. Sometimes it's just that one little bit that will make me say no, because it is a one little bit that is a deciding factor. I could go into sort of details, but there again, I don't really have enough knowledge to do it. But if I see it, that's enough. I separate myself from it then, because it's not as good as it may seem. It's a bit like, as I've said before, you can say, well, look, yes, we might be able to improve things with the use of technology. No, I just don't affiliate myself with that, because that is not part of my belief or my fantasy or how I think this earth was meant to originally be, even though it may not be anything like it now. That is sad. If I'm probably living in total delusion land. But, I still think that is the case. Unless I'm not a human being, then, it is still the case for me. I mean, okay, so a lot of people might say, well, look, face the facts. You are a stupid person because you're not facing the reality of what is now. Even if what you say was once possible or the truth, maybe it's not possible anymore. Maybe it is no longer valid now because the world has changed. You yourself say you're in a technological matrix. Why are you talking about being in sync with nature? Well, that just come back to me, by the way, and oh, gee, this is terrible, that I was told only a week ago that the human being, and this is like biology, has the same frequency as the Earth's natural frequency. This is what I was told. This is like a scientific fact. So that at least kind of goes in line with what I've said, that we're meant to be, that yes, our frequency or what we are is the same as what is natural. It's not the same as anything that's technological. That is a different frequency. That is the frequency of the matrix and the God entity. Maybe the disciples and those that are representatives of the God entity, maybe their frequency has changed. Maybe human beings have changed a bit. Maybe like I'm at low frequency now. So if I'm meant to be at high frequency, clearly there's something wrong. I'm limited. I'm not operating, that's why I have to use the technology. As I've said before, it's like using a crutch because you're not at, any potential. You're not operating. You're almost malfunctioning as a human being, and that sounds technological, which is bad, and I don't like to do that. But it's essentially the same thing as a machine that is that is running on that's got no petrol, that's basically malfunctioning, breaking down. And that's not a good example. But either way, it's still. I'll try to get back to this. I'll try to say this, but it's kind of like, I put it simply in myself, because I was thinking this the other day, and like myself, right? Okay, so I use myself as an example, that way no one gets upset, because if I'm talking even about the Archon God and other beings, even though I'm not naming people, of course, but it's still like, it's better to, perhaps it's best to keep it personal, But I'm going to try to explain the differences between some human beings even. And you won't probably disagree with this. In this world we have IQ. That's like a test of intelligence. And we place a lot of store on intelligence, don't we, in this world? You've got a high IQ, people are very impressed. You've got a high IQ, you'll probably be top in some field. Because that's how this system, or this earth matrix almost works, But like myself, right, I probably have, I don't know what my IQ is, but I'm assuming that it's probably about 90 or something like that. Okay, don't look at me and say, no, yours is well below that. You're really overstepping the mark. Well, at least I'm making some videos, so give me some slack here if you will. But I have made videos on people that I would, that officially have been told that they have a low IQ. And my view on that. So it's okay for me to say that, supposing I've got an IQ of 90, which is probably fairly close to probably is fairly like that, because if I go on my past and schooling and stuff like that, that might be reasonable. It could be a bit lower. It could be a bit higher if I want to be, want to be generous, but it wouldn't be much, okay? I don't even know what the average is. I'm assuming that the average is about 95 or something, maybe 100. I'm not sure. It could be a bit lower. I'm not really sure. But all I'm saying is that I would probably be round about average or maybe a bit lower. That's just trying to be honest, okay? But supposing okay, so I said 90. 90 and 90 is 180. 180 would be double that. That would be a very high IQ. That would be a genius level human being. Just as our Archon God that rules this world is genius level at a technological level. You see what I'm trying to say? Even human beings can be a genius level, high intellect, what they call high intellect, can be brilliant in many fields. We'll be able to fathom a lot of things out, things that I couldn't even touch on and don't touch on and don't understand. But my own way of looking at it now, because I used to be very impressed, like so many people, with people who were of a high IQ, And I'm not discrediting them by saying that I'm no longer impressed. I'm just saying that they are still top of the line in this matrix world. They will rise to the top in this world. And they will be impressive in their fields. Hopefully, if they've got the right information. But they may have the right information anyway. They will still know infinitely more than me. But I'm saying, but my own way of looking at it now is that I should know more, but we don't, because we're in a matrix, we're in the dark, we're at a low spiritual level, so therefore our awareness of things is a lot more limited. My own fantasy way of looking at it, in my little Alice in Wonderland, in my little fairy tale, where I put humans at the top of the heap as opposed to the demigods of this world, which are at the real physical top in this physical technological reality, if you want to look at it that way. I could be losing you here and myself as well, because I'm saying too many things and using too many words. So if I get one or two wrong, it's a fantasy. Don't take it too serious, because I probably might get many things wrong. But, I will still stick. I don't necessarily think it's all wrong myself, but there could be some points where I might be slightly off. Because, as I've said before, I'm not at full awareness. I'm not at a high spiritual level. So naturally, I can't see everything. But what I do see gives me enough to construct the fantasy that I am saying. But even that will be how you interpret it. Because two people will interpret things, as I say, you could see the same thing and two people could see it differently. Because we live in a land of illusion, a matrix land, a fairy tale land of illusion, and of a word, two words that I only learnt about 2 or 3 months ago, even though I was aware of it, but I didn't know it was actually... they actually had a statement for it, and that is called cognitive dissonance. I only learned this a few months ago, told by someone who may even have cognitive dissonance, which is strange. In other words, you can get information from people, particularly from those that project. They can give you so much information, even though they themselves are riddled with the very conditions that they will project onto you or onto someone else, which is interesting. That is very interesting, and that is also the matrix. But cognitive dissonance is where two people can look at the same thing and one person sees it clearly, logically, and sees what it really is, and another person sees the same thing but sees it as separated themselves from that reality, from that awareness, even though they should see it, because it's too disturbing, because it doesn't fit their fairy tale, just as maybe you might say, well, hey, maybe we don't fit your fairy tale. See, this is what I'm saying. But, there probably is a true reality, though, too. Or maybe there isn't. I don't know. There would have to be some sort of real reality, I would think. Even if you're playing in a matrix, and even though it's it's tampering with the spirituality of spirit beings, if you like. Human beings are spirit beings. Instead of saying human beings, you could just say spirit beings, but we don't do that. Maybe there's a reason for that too, because so much of everything is of the matrix. Even the words are of the matrix. And a lot of the words have matrix connotations. They are the vibration of the matrix. If you want to have a matrix and you want it at a certain vibration, even language has to be of that vibration, just as the tone of my voice is a vibration. And listening to someone who's frustrated and angry or confused is probably not the best vibration. I've said before, the calmness and that, but you will get that more from the matrix operators or more from the matrix representatives. The matrix actors, as all actors in this real world are of the matrix, because if you are rewarded fairly well, you're rewarded by the matrix, because the matrix is like every single thing that is of the earth, like you cannot really be of the matrix, I wouldn't think, but I could be wrong about this. In other words, if the matrix is giving you a lot, then you are of the matrix, so you are a different type of spiritual being. You would have to be, because the matrix isn't going to shower a human being with too much, because that human being has to stay at a certain frequency. And if you give me too many goodies, I might just be happy, even though they might be physical goodies, which is kind of non-spiritual. A human being can actually still raise the vibration by getting physical goodies, I would think. That's I'm trying to use the word, the duality of this world. If I'm trying to be fancy here, it's probably not the right word. The duality, the opposite of this world, and humans, because they are real human beings, because they're a real life force, and because they're real human beings, they actually can turn even negativity into positive. If they're a real human being. But it's not likely that the matrix is going to reward a real human being for raising the frequency, because then they lose their matrix. Matrix can only operate at a certain frequency. Human beings are meant to operate at the frequency of the same as themselves. Oh, that's an interesting point, because see, that information that I was given only a week ago about the human body, I think, being the same frequency as the natural earth, assuming that is correct, that's kind of interesting too, because, I wonder if we're actually in a natural earth anymore. Well, we're not. And see, this is probably the problem. Hey, I'm getting it now, aren't I? I'm getting slightly, or maybe you're getting it too. That's if you don't already know it, you probably do. These videos are meant to be for, like I've said before, originally for those that just want to realise they're living in a slightly artificial world sort of thing, as I come to that realisation. But, see, if we were natural human beings, which, some of us still are, but not 100% natural, because that is not possible in this technological artificial domain, I don't think. But this even this information is coming from the presumption, the reality that that human beings still think that they are 100% natural and that they are in 100% natural earth. That's why they put this out, saying that we are the same frequency as the earth. But you see, I think this is what's happened, is that we are not the same frequency, or the frequency we're meant to be, maybe. And even if we are, the earth is no longer that frequency. And this is why we're all out of whack, shall we say. If that's putting it in a fantasy way, but it's like that. It's very... But it's still a frequency battle. So if it's still a frequency battle, see, I'm trying to work this out even now as I'm making the video. How ridiculous to do that. It's very unprofessional, isn't it, to be working something out while you're making a video. You should have it already worked out. But see, my own personal way of looking at it then still comes down to that even low, see, the technology can change the frequency of the human. A real human. But a real human can also, if they can manage it, which obviously we're not, they can affect the frequency of the matrix too. So that's why I say it is a battle. It's a battle. It's a World War III. At that level even. There's many things going on in the world today. Some we're aware of, some we're not, different people. I probably am not aware of everything, but I'm aware of far too much, actually, for my own liking. But it's still a frequency battle, I would guess, based on my own way of looking at the fantasy world and at myself and at the reality even at a real level, because it is still a frequency battle. So... But I would say that the technology, which is a different frequency, see, to the natural human being, is overtaking it and has overtaken this earth. But you see, how many, it's probably taken over a lot of people. So maybe it's like possession. I just went way off there, didn't I? But yes, maybe it is. I think it is. Because I will do that movie in another video. So we'll go off the possession. But it's still the technology can, most people don't think of technology as a being or a force. But it is. It's a frequency. And we're a frequency. It's just a different force, a different frequency, I suppose. It's not compatible with a human being. I've said this before. Or it shouldn't be. And if it is, then it will change the human being into a negative low frequency force, you see. I don't think I'm making sense here. But either way, I was going back to myself. Like, supposing I've got an IQ of 90, right? I flatter myself, okay? And genius is probably double that, 180. To my way of looking at it, sure, the genius will be a disciple of the Matrix, will do very well in the Matrix, will even probably invent things for the Matrix, will, depending on how much correct information this person receives, will be able to manipulate a lot and do much. But you know what a genius does anyway. And we're impressed with the genius of the Matrix. It's a different thing to a spiritual human being. See, even if I have an average or below average IQ, which is a fact, okay, and not at genius level or even above average, maybe even, at an IQ intelligent level, it doesn't matter, because you can be like the Matrix, genius level God at a technological level, but it will never compare to a high spiritual level. This is where we get confused and misled, I would say. This is only my way of looking at it. You could have a low IQ even, be low intelligence, but if you are at a high spiritual level, you will still be more advanced in any way, because the spirituality really rules everything in a way, even though we're not aware of it. You will still be much more advanced. I'm not sure what the degrees are, in other words, like if I'm a spiritual being or a human being and I've got a average IQ, and I'm at a low spiritual level, which is pretty much what I would be, I would say, can I offer any opposition or any threat to the Matrix, to the genius of the Matrix, to geniuses of the Matrix, to the 180 IQ so-called humans? I would say that, at a superficial level, it would definitely appear that the 180-degree IQ genius level person is vastly superior and should be at a vastly higher level than a low IQ human. But you see, if you are a genius level, high IQ of the Matrix, don't know whether I'm putting this right, and you will, work for the Matrix, because there's no point in having an high IQ if you don't work for the Matrix, because you won't be able to do anything in the world. You'll probably use your IQ to do physical things in this so-called physical reality. But either way, whatever genius you have will be used by the Matrix, because you won't be rewarded unless you are of the Matrix. You won't be able to work in this world. There's no point in being a genius in this world if you have particular skills, particularly skills that the Matrix has, encouraged and watered, shall we say, or trying to find the words. Obviously, I'm not of the Matrix, and certainly not very good on the the Matrix will, encourage, grow its own, shall we say, and water its own, and feed its own, and make sure that it flourishes. Make sure its own flourishes. So the Matrix geniuses, will work for the matrix, because even their expertise and their talents and their skills will be of the matrix. A spiritual human being doesn't actually have to have probably a lot of those skills. They could have. But you see, my way of looking at it is that most of our skills as a spiritual, even at a physical level, are limited because of the domain we're in, and because it is a battle against technology and spirit, because it's a frequency battle. I don't think I've made this video good at all. Look, see, it's like I was saying, I was only told this a week ago, even though, I've said this in previous videos, not at a scientific level, I know. I've just put it in a vague term that, the spiritually advanced human being, or a human being functioning as they're meant to function, just as a human being, which is a different level, it's not technological, at that highest level, is not, there's no comparison between that and the genius level technological being, or those that go that way, or are of the matrix, or are of the science, or of the things that are, of this world. I didn't put that very well. Because most science is used to battle out the frequency. I would say that because it's a matrix, but it's, even though it's a technologically based God entity that uses technology to change frequency, just as the human, with what is natural in them, changes frequency, you see, mingles with the frequency, interacts with other frequency, and therefore can change it, and does change it. But mostly the human being, because they are interacting with because they're in a matrix and they're operating with the matrix technology, the matrix frequency. That was the whole purpose of this information that was given to me about the human having the same frequency as a natural frequency Earth. But we don't probably have a natural frequency Earth anymore, maybe. Because how could we if it's covered in technology? I would say, but I could be wrong. It could be still vibrating at that, whatever it is, 7 hertz or whatever, 6, 7 hertz. That's what it said in the thing. I've got it written down on the little thing that it was given to me. And I thought, that just proves to me that what I've said all along, that, because I just always thought myself, just at a personal level, and I only discovered this late in my own life because I was kept away from the sunlight, kept away from nature, to some extent. And I realised how enjoyable it was to even interact with a real other life force, to see, like if you go out on a nice, beautiful day, you say, what a beautiful day, I feel very good. Even if it's only very temporarily, you should feel that probably. And if you interact with, some people like interacting with their animals and things, and it makes them feel a bit better. That's nature, you see, that's a natural life force. I was aware of this, and that's all I was saying. But it is actually scientifically a fact, evidently, as well. And it's actually been known for 100 years, because it was a fellow called Tesla that actually said this, I think 100 years ago. That was also in the little pamphlet that I was given. So this is interesting, isn't it? But it's not just interesting, it's actually a fact, you could say. But like I say, it's all a matter of how important you think it is. Obviously I didn't know that at a scientific level, but I just knew it from my own personal experience. And so I'm that was how I said everything. And then when I was told that everything is frequency, I just pick things up a bit quick, that's all. But yes, I don't have most of the details, but I'm a basic, simple person, so it's enough for me. And with my own experience, I see it as a valid reality, even though it probably wouldn't be enough information or enough proof, shall we say, to this whole thing for most people, because it's like that movie The Matrix, which is the Matrix, whatever, we're in the Matrix. And I say the movies and stuff give you a lot of information because the Matrix has to give humans a certain amount of information. It has to be given back to them. Why? As I've said this before, why does this the case? Assuming that you believe that, as I do, that everything is a fantasy, but also every fantasy is a reality. So every fairy tale, every movie, everything that is of the Matrix has a reality to it as well, a truth to it, a validity to it, even though it will put it in such a way that it will be all over the place. You have to piece it together. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like that. But if you just do like I do, because I'm a simple person and not the 180 IQ type of thing, maybe 90 or less. But you see, as I say, if you just say, look, I don't have to be clever, and I don't even have to be at high frequency to get correct information. Obviously, I'll fail in the Matrix if I'm not at high frequency, and the Matrix will overwhelm me. I'll be consumed by the Matrix. But I can still get the true information or the true reality from the movies, from what the Matrix gives me, because the Matrix has to give me the reality. Why? Because you're a human being. Because you're a spiritual human being. Because that overrides even the Matrix, evidently. This is just my conclusion, because otherwise why? But of course you would have to say, if you don't think that everything that the Matrix gives you is a reality, if you don't think that every movie has a basis in reality and has a spiritual truth even, then of course you're going to say, well, what I'm saying doesn't hold water, and that's up to you. It's like everything else. But I say, as a simple person, it makes it very easy for me, because I don't have to be intelligent. I don't have to have a good IQ. I could even be below average. But if I just watch a movie and say, this is giving me the correct fairy tale, the correct reality, then I know what's going on. I understand the Matrix a bit more each time. The more I consume the Matrix stuff, but take it all to have truth. But you will have to, you will have to say, yes, I am in a Matrix, and this is part of the Matrix, and that's all I do. So I don't have to be a genius. My main problem is raising the vibration. And if you raise the vibration, my own personal way of looking at it, as I said before, is that there's no comparison. What you would know if you were at a high spiritual level or at a high frequency level, whatever you want to say, I'm not quite sure how it all works, as you know, you just know all this anyway. Doing it through the Matrix is doing it the slow, tedious, hard way. It's doing it the physical way. It's doing it the way the Matrix likes us to do everything. But, we're in low frequency time, shall we say. We're not at high frequency, so we can't access things just like as though we have to download from the Matrix rather than from our own self or from our own natural kind of whatever it is that makes us function as a whole, as a natural human being. to where you could just see through a wall type of thing. You know what I mean? Instead, the Matrix, you would have to go with the Matrix way of using technology to see through a wall, like the Matrix does, I believe. In its technology that it uses in various other fields. I'm not real familiar with this, but we hear about it sometimes even on the TV, how they, in certain situations, the more advanced organisations of the world, I don't know what you'd call it, even just, well, it's the same as science, but you can use science for good or bad. You can, Leonardo da Vinci, was supposed to be the greatest artist, but he probably contributed just as much to war as what he did to paintings or to anything artistic or creative, because a lot of his designs and things, I had heard on older documentaries, were used for war at the time, so, because he was of the Matrix, you see, because, if you, like I say, if you're a genius, you can only benefit by being of the Matrix, by the world around you. Even back then, I don't know if the world was the same as what it is. It wouldn't have been the same as what it is now, obviously, but you still worked for the kings and the queens and those that were in power, but, it wasn't like Leonardo could just click his fingers and do things for himself. He was a Matrix disciple, a revered Matrix demigod of the Matrix, a demigod, and he still is, because, these people are looked up to by all of us, and, they had brilliance in their different fields and in their way of thinking, but they were of the Matrix, because even those, they use their genius in physical ways, like to invent an aeroplane, that's right, or designs for weapons and designs for even scientific ways of looking at things. They didn't look at it in a very simple spiritual way, and they might have had more information in some ways. I couldn't say that they're not spiritual, because they would have seen themselves as spiritual. Like I say, it's a very thin line, and not one that I care to cross or to really go into, because it's something I don't fully understand. But, even at a spirituality or at a denomination level, I think I said this in the last one, but I think I deleted it. This is why I don't go into these areas, because, like, some people might say, she talks about being a spiritual human being, but then she says that she's done everything wrong, and then she says that she's at low frequency, and this is all true. So she's not really a spiritual human being, and she's certainly not of any particular belief system. So maybe we, even of the Matrix, many of us of the Matrix, actually consider ourselves to be highly spiritual beings. We consider that we have the highest intentions for our kind and for the so-called Earth Matrix, or the natural Earth, if they say that is the case. Because even, I'm not to know how much each disciple, or whether you're of the Matrix or not, most are of the Matrix, would know how much things really are natural or not, or how much they really know. Because, you could be contributing. Like I say, I played for the Matrix all my life, unconsciously. And even when I did it of my own free choice, which, as I've said before, are spiritual human beings, the choice is still ours. It's just that we're not conscious of the reality. So we always make a Matrix choice, or a wrong choice for us as spiritual human beings, often. But as human beings, if we were not so much of what is around us, the environment, shall we say, whether it be personal relationships or the world or anything. I know I'm not putting this very well. You can get caught up in the matrix. You can get caught. You can look. Just put it simply. This is what I would say. And this has been my mistake in my life. And it is, look, basically just keep it simple as I do. And it is simple in a way. Funny thing is, and I could be wrong about this, okay? Because like I say, spirituality will vary from person to person, just as different people have denominations, different beliefs, different denominations. You know, what I consider spiritual, someone else might consider not spiritual, and what I consider spiritual, someone else might consider not really their belief or their spiritual. So it is a bit like that too. What is the real reality? I'm just going on what I think is the real reality for, for a human being. May not be the reality for the matrix or those, because they will see things from a matrix perspective. They may not be of the same frequency now as a human. They may have changed their, like I say, humans can, like I'm almost non-human myself in the sense that I'm at low frequency. That means that I'm at the lowest capacity that you can be for what I am. So naturally the matrix disciples and demigods look very vastly superior because they're at their highest technological level, whereas we are at our lowest spiritual level or human level, you see. So it looks that we are the inferior in this reality. And we are at the bottom because it's a reverse world. So naturally that is a reality too. So it's kind of strange in that way. But it's only strange because we are in, like I said, we're in a world that is not really conducive to, a human being in many ways. Not if they want to be at a high spiritual human level. But then again, most of us, because we have not touched on it, because most of us have not reached even any sort of capacity, it's natural to assume that the highest denomination, the highest, the most advanced beings are of the matrix. The most advanced, apparently, human beings are of the matrix. Even though they are of the technological God's dominion, shall we say, service. It was an episode of one of my old TV shows. I'm going to go off the serious track here for a minute, and I should have kept on track. No Marks for Civility was the name of the episode. Favourite episode of an old TV show. No Marks for Civility. Maybe that's how humans are meant to be. They're not meant to get any marks for civility. But instead, if you want to be of the matrix, you have to get a lot of marks for civility. You have to serve the matrix. A lot of people would say, why would you not want to serve the earth? Well, see, that's another thing. I say because it's a matrix. But if you think it's not, then you would... And yes, we're of the same frequency, apparently, what I was told. You see how confusing this world gets? See how everything is a contradiction? It's actually not. It's actually quite simple. But it can get you that way. And if you even get into the discussion even, like I'm doing here. Because I always try to see it from the Matrix's point of view as well as my own and potential human beings' way of looking at it. When I say potential, supposedly at a higher frequency. So I always have to look at things at least 2 or 3 ways. And the Matrix likes that too, instead of keeping it simple, because it should just be simple for a human being. A human being shouldn't have to deal with all this Matrix genius level complicated reality. It might be fascinating to many. It keeps us occupied. But that's because we're not, because most are of the Matrix, so they don't like their own frequency. They can't just be. And I think that was from a comedy thing too. Why can't you just be? That's like a slap back at the human, saying, why can't you just be? Because if you just be, you are the be all. You are the be and the end of all. You are the all, in a way. But you can't be, no, because you're of the Matrix, because the Matrix has you. I think that's from the movie too. The Matrix has you. Well, it does. It has most people. How can it not have you when you're in it? Well, that's the thing. That's the whole thing, is that you have to be in it, but not of it, somehow. That is almost impossible, especially as we now have a technological world. The more technology you have, the harder it is to not be of the technological matrix, because the technology is a different frequency, and frequency will affect you. So that's why I'm never an advocate for technology, because I think you can go past a point with all that, and whether we have or not is another thing. It doesn't benefit, it makes a cripple of a human being to use technology. It doesn't enhance and benefit them to where they can add to what they are. But either way, my own personal fantasy reality is that there is nothing to add to a human being, because a human being of high potential, is insurpassable in comparison with anything and everything else. And the technological matrix knows this. But, its aim is to use the human being for the matrix, and advance its own technological world, its own how it wants to be, because it's different. It's only natural that each of its own kind. A lion doesn't particularly care about the deer expanding its potential or thriving or, multiplying and taking over the earth. No, the lion wants to. That's just the way it's always been, and that's probably reasonable, I suppose. It just depends on which side of the fence you're on, or what beast you are, or what animal you are, or what species you are, or what you are. But it's kind of, but, I personally think that everything, even, no, I'm not going to make sense here. All I'm trying to say is that, the matrix and those that are of the matrix are at their highest level, whereas the human being is at its lowest level. It is, I think they used to say the dark ages is where there's no knowledge, no information, where everything is in the dark. Well, human beings have always been in the dark ages, but we are now in very darker still ages, because, the more you go away from what you are, the more you go away from nature, the more you incorporate a different technology, even though it might appear to be enlightenment. In my view, it's not enlightenment. That's just my way of looking at it. Some people might say technology is the enlightenment of the future, because logically speaking, you're conditioned more or less and told, and you even think that, because I know myself, if I can get easy information from technology, it's reasonable for me to think that that information is enlightenment, it's advancement, even at a spiritual level. I'm saying it's not, but it can appear that way. It almost seems reasonable. I don't know if I'm making sense here. I'm probably not, but it's very hard to explain it. It's an idea. It's more of a concept, but it's a fairy tale that I think is a reality. But it's not everyone's version of reality. It could be, because in the sense that, like I say, if you are in a community, if you are in parts of this world where it's very affluent for you, and you appear to be thriving and benefiting, and that uses technology, it would be reasonable for you to think that technology is great enlightenment for you. You would laugh at me or anyone else who is at low frequency and living a less life and not particularly advancing themselves in any way in this reality. It would be reasonable for you to say, that is not enlightenment, we have enlightenment. And more so if, like I say, even my argument, not argument, but my view, or just talking about it, what I might think about things at this time, to say that we live in a technological world, a technological reality almost, and depending on how far that technological reality has gone, it would be reasonable for anyone to say that, to be a technological being, or to worship that, or to think that that is enlightenment, probably doesn't seem that unreasonable. And I lost my train of thought there because I was on track. Now I'm actually almost endorsing the opposing idea, shall we say. And really that is not what I personally am saying, but I'm saying it would be reasonable for many people to see it that way. I don't know if I explained that very well. I probably didn't. But you have to still, my own, lost my thought here. Oh dear. Yeah, see, even where you are in the world, we could be, in a real fairy world, like I think we are, in a real fairy tale, in the sense that I only know what I see around myself in my own limited, not only at a limited intellectual, physical, psychological, and spiritual level. I acknowledge the first three quite easily, because when you're not feeling too good, when you're physically, out of condition, as they say, when you're mentally under stress, and when you're psychologically confused by either people around you, or circumstances. It's all the same thing. It's all the matrix, because the matrix uses everything. Matrix uses people, and matrix uses circumstances. Often you will find, and I'll try to finish up here, as I've said before, because it is still governed by certain spiritual laws, even though it's a technological domain overseen by a technological advanced God, God in the sense that it has dominion, and also God in the sense that most acknowledge this, go along with this, worship this, follow this. You know, you're God if you have a lot of disciples, if you have a lot of followers, if you have people or beings that are prepared to follow your instructions, follow your directions without question. You know. This is a matrix, you see, and this is how a matrix works, and this is how this is. It's just how it is. But, you know, just because it is here as a spirit, as a human being, even though you might be influenced and even almost overwhelmed by, you know, technologically instigated situations, you are ruled also and influenced and overwhelmed by the use of technology. You know, I don't wash my clothes by hand anymore, you know, I use a washing machine, you know, so you know, that's just an example. You know, you watch your TV, you drive your car, you know, if you really can really raise your spirit a little bit, you might be able to get on an aeroplane. Wouldn't that be good? I've never been on an aeroplane ever in my entire life, and yet sometimes I have the audacity and the ridiculous imagination enough to say that maybe at a high spiritual level we could actually move ourselves through space without a technological device. That's why I say we're in a matrix where we're very dependent on technology. We can't do anything just in ourselves. Now, I have not done this myself, and I certainly have never seen anyone do it, so it is pure fantasy and speculation, you know, at its highest level, no doubt. But, you know, I see birds fly, and humans should be more spiritually advanced and should be maybe even, you know, why shouldn't they also be advanced in other ways, in a natural way, just as the bird is a natural flyer? You know, it's possible, maybe. Maybe not. Most people would say not. And either way, you know, it is possible, I suppose, also, because I always think of about 2 or 3 scenarios, whether that's good or bad, but I try to see things from other possibilities. Now, I mean, it is possible that, you know, this is a fantasy. If we're plonked into an artificial domain, this is pure fantasy, and I really do say this honestly this time, that it's pure fantasy, because I could be off on some of these fantasies. Some of the fantasies that I tell you, the fairy tales, I actually believe myself. Others, I think they're a possibility, but I don't know. I wouldn't bet, you know, my life on them being totally true. But some of them I'd come pretty close. Others I probably would bet, you know. But you know, because unless I have, you know, like for myself, unless I have 110% proof, I actually am not a gambling person, as I said, so I actually tend to be like that. Sometimes I will be, you know, I really am like that. I'm not really as much, you know, there's 2 sides to myself and to this reality as well, to where I really am a very realistic person. I do like to have 100% proof of something before I put myself out there, if you know what I mean. I do tend to be like that. I've always been like that. But now I am throwing a little bit of caution away, because the reality itself has shown me to be unrealistic, or not what I thought anyway. Now, if you think something is your whole reality and then you see other aspects, it does shake your sense of reality a bit. And I just say the least, it does. It's like discovering, you know, it's a bit like someone being in love with someone and then discovering that that person is not what they thought at all. And the further away they are from what you thought, the more your reality is rocked. So, but that's just an example, and they're all practical things that happen. Now I've lost my train of thought. I just cannot keep on a decent sentence, can I? Oh dear. Oh, I've lost it. Could I add, if I've still got some space left, and I should really be doing this for a separate one. You know how I have said that we have the disciples of the Matrix, our demigods, those that we look up to in this reality, whether you think it's natural, artificial, or what, doesn't matter. We have people of prominence. We have kings and queens, maybe not so much of that now. But we have them in our entertainment industry. They're our kings and queens. They're my little, they're your little gods and your goddesses of the screen, and those that have all the creativity. They do all the things that we like and enjoy, etc. They're the demigods of the Matrix. Okay, they represent the God of the Matrix in many ways. Almost, you could take the whole lot of them, everything that is of the Matrix, and then you have a picture of the mind in some ways of the God entity. But it is still about playing the human, so you're not going to get necessarily the complete clear picture. The God wants to show itself, show its way of looking at things. It will play and play you, just as the psychopathic narcissist often plays another human being. 1 minute they're the powerful that will dominate. The next minute they can be the victim even. It's a game, and it's played at all levels in this world, unfortunately. I say unfortunately because I find it not conducive to well-being in any way, personally. But some people find it interesting, exciting, no doubt. I don't know. Can't say. But either way, we're all forced to play. And if you're not aware you're playing, you will really play it to the hilt. And, I think that once you play it and take it for 100% real, a lot of people find the Matrix and the disciples very empowering. They think it is high spiritual way of, because if you think someone is creative, if you think someone gives you, like I honestly sit here and say that, maybe if I was in a different demeanour, a different persona, more appealing to a larger number of people, dare I say that, I would have to say that I am then the actor of the Matrix. And quite frankly, it would be better, as I've said before, if more people looked at, even if, unfortunately, yes, there are human beings, and you are meant to be connected to those. But because most are of the Matrix, it's almost advisable, or safe, shall we say, to look at even a human being and say, that's an actor, that's the Matrix. I know I find myself doing that. It's almost safer, because the odds of you really seeing a genuine actor, when I say a genuine actor, I mean someone that's actually not, reading from a script, shall we say, or hasn't been programmed by the Matrix. In other words, programmed by the Matrix is where you are doing the Matrix bidding, where you are paid, or rewarded for your service to the matrix. Now, if you believe in the matrix, you wouldn't even see it that. You would see it as worship. You would see it as the correct spiritual thing to even do. So it does depend on how you look at things. I would say that a lot of people, though, and I could be wrong about this, I could be wrong. I don't know the statistics. I don't know the real situation in this Earth matrix. I really don't. How could I? Well, I could presume, but I really don't. But it could be, this is just an example, like when you vote, how, like I know where I come from, they've always said the swinging voter decides the election. The swinging voter decides who you have in power, who will rule your world, whether it be your community, your state, your country, or the world, whatever. It's all one and the same for me. It's all the matrix. That's just my view, okay? That's just my way of looking at things. But it's the swinging voter that decides the election. They often say where I am. They've always said that. In other words, you have some people who are of the matrix. They're the matrix disciples, whatever. Matrix worshippers, matrix demigods, our gods in a way, because some of us are not in contact with what they serve, because if it's a matrix, you have to have a total technological force that rules the whole matrix. You could say, well, it's just a combination of all the demigods. Okay, you could do that, I suppose, but I wouldn't think so. But it's all a matter of opinion, let's be honest. And my fantasies even lose me most of the time, as I'm getting lost right now. Now, like the swinging voter, that could be the majority. That's usually what it half implies in an election. So you have those that already have decided who they're going to vote for. You have two sides, as you know, in an election. You usually have two main candidates. At least that's in where I come from. There's always been the Liberal and the Labor type thing. Okay? We have other little factions, but we know they're not going to get in. Other little ones that run. But we have two main parties, two main power sources, and only one can actually win, supposedly. Okay? And it's the majority or the swinging voter that often decides, because some people, like my father, for instance, he always voted for the same party no matter what, from when he was when he first voted, right through till the day he died. It didn't matter if they sometimes deviated from their original ideals or ideas or policies that he might have thought were really good 20 years before. He always stuck with that one party. He was committed. He was of the matrix, shall we say. He had already decided what God he was to worship. It was part of him. He believed it. Okay? Nothing swayed him from that, even if occasionally he saw that it was something that he probably didn't really like, that didn't fit. By and large, he was like, this is my God, this is my party, I stick with this forever. I've made a commitment, a lifelong commitment, shall we say. It's like that. And there are others that are human beings. Let's say we have the matrix, the technology, and we have the human. There are some that will always, this is my fantasy way of looking at it. Some humans will always want to stay with nature and with the human. They will always be of that. That is their core way of looking at things. And the matrix looks at their technology and their spirituality, even if you want to look at it that way. I'm stretching it here because I try to be fair to all sides, because like I say, there are a lot of human beings who think they're all spiritual. Let's say most people in the world think they're spiritual. They certainly think they're human, same thing. But, you know, and they believe that. And they think that something else that is a different type of spirituality is not. That's just me being broad, even though I don't personally think that at all. I think technology is technology. I think a human is a human. I've said this before, that's just myself. But I'm saying that that isn't necessarily how everyone else sees it. But either way, it's the swinging voter that usually decides an election. They always say where I am. That's someone who can be swayed to go either way. That's someone who is like the vibration of this very matrix. Goes backwards and forwards. It's continually oscillating. Can't decide. And actually that is how the matrix works, and that's even how humans operate in it at a basic level, but I think I've lost myself here again. You know, that's why I say the frequency can go up and down. Matrix tries to keep the frequency at the level of the matrix, the level that it wants. Humans, you know, they're like when you hit that hammer thing that they used to have in the old, you know, where they used to have the strong man. He'd come along and hit the thing, and the bar would go up. If he was real strong, he'd hit it and hit the top. Well, humans have never hit the top, or most of us haven't. You know, I'm not saying that hasn't been the case in the past, as I've said before, but it would be very, very rare. You know, there might have been one. You know, that would depend on, and others close maybe, but, you know, I don't know. I really don't know this because I don't understand the past enough, and I do think that everything is centered in the moment. So therefore, right this very moment, you know, I now think this, even though I've always been stuck in the past and always paranoid and worried about the future. But it's really only the moment that counts, because the moment is what will determine the future. Because the frequency now is what makes the reality in the next moment or whatever, or in the future. It's all one in the same. And it's kind of, I don't understand it, to be honest, but it's kind of like as though everything contributes to the reality now. And maybe it's a question of getting it stable, I don't know. Because, see, that's the problem, is that because we're all confused and all in the dark, the frequency is probably all over the place. Just like my emotions are just literally pushed all over the place by the matrix. You know, that's right, to where you can't even concentrate to even know whether you're pushing a delete button or another one. You know, that's at a very basic level, and that is not normal. That is not natural. That is not normal. That is not natural. The matrix is not normal or natural, and does not like normal or natural, I don't think. That's what I think anyway, because it appears to push it around. It appears to not really like it very much. Because their idea of normal is not natural. They don't think that being a normal, natural human is the way to go. You know, they think that, you know, and a funny thing is there's some truth to it too. So this is the problem. That's why I just stick to my own keeping it simple, because it would be very easy to say that if everything is an artificial type of DNA or something, I've heard stuff like this, I don't fully understand it, and that it's all numbers, which is like not real. You know, like, I'm not saying this isn't true, because the thinking creating reality is kind of, could even go along that line. But I don't think it really matters. I still think that as a human being, we were meant to be a certain way. to be, the center of things and to be the best that we can. And yet the reverse is true. Like I say, we're in the darker ages because we think we have so much knowledge. We get so much knowledge, but it's all of the dark. It's all of the matrix. It's all dark. It keeps us in the darker ages because we're only making the world and the matrix better. We're not making ourselves as a human being personally better. And if we could make ourselves, then we could make our own matrix, if you want to look at it that way. I'm not sure if that actually made any sense. But a matrix that's more conducive to us staying normal, healthy, happy, advanced people. Like if you can be, my own personal perspective is that the human being is the most advanced people, the most advanced there is, at the highest level. I've said this many times. I have no evidence for this. I've not experienced this or seen it. But I see a lot of opposition to the human being. And, I base it on the evidence of the reality of the opposing forces. Because if something is not a force, there is no need to oppose it. Does that make sense or not? I don't know. Does it? I mean, or have we created this for ourselves in a way? Because, yes, I'm just going to go back to what I said before, that if you keep it simple, if a human being just knew from the beginning that it was a human being, that seems like a joke to say that, because you'd say, well, we all know we are human. Well, no, we don't. Because if we just knew that a human being is a spiritual being and we just did things naturally and normally to where we don't compare ourselves, we don't compete, we feel no threat from anything because we are the be and end all. Therefore, we would always make the right choices. We wouldn't make negative choices. The matrix tends to like you to compete in its matrix and play the game. So therefore, you do negative things against other human beings usually. And they're actually not what you should do because the only way that the matrix keeps its total position in a funny kind of way, as I've said before, you can talk about the matrix, I can talk about the matrix God, I can talk about its demigods and all this stuff that is all so fascinating, so powerful, so all intrusive, so all-encompassing of everything. It is almost the all. But it really matters not if, I would think, but I could be wrong about this, if as a human being, you from day one are always making the human choice and not playing in the matrix and not going against another human being in any way. If you just follow that simple policy, it's actually quite simple, really. If we'd done that, if I'd done that, the matrix would not be as powerful, the matrix would not be as overwhelming, and the matrix would not be as destructive even. Our world would not be as destructive. And a lot of people, even who don't believe in the matrix, would probably say, well, there's a bit of truth to that anyway. Like we have been destructive to one another. But this is all because, personally, I think, because we don't know that we're in a matrix and we don't understand the forces that come against us. We don't see where the negativity is. We often see the negativity where there isn't negativity and vice versa because we live in a reverse world. We get tricked. I know this from my own personal experience, that realisation of all the mistakes, because I'm painfully look back and you see the pattern You see where you went terribly wrong. You made the wrong choices, the wrong people even, not being aware that some people are of the matrix and therefore they're not really for you. If you are, and many even that are humans, if they are too, a narcissistic psychopath or a psychopathic narcissist or whatever you want, I don't know, all these different things. It's all degrees and different things. If you don't recognize that for what it is, you will then be, that they will be working for the matrix, even if they're not, as I've said before, even if they're not consciously doing it. Many are consciously, aware of what they like and what, many will like the matrix, like the disciples, like the matrix, many will probably openly like this. I have liked some of this in my own past. Still do, but just aware that it is not necessarily benefit to myself, that's all. But it is very hard to like things. And is it wise, is it sensible, is it not foolish to worship that which is not beneficial to you, or which is really working against you attaining being the best you can? In other words, a spiritual human being, But, I think that there are, you can be addicted to the matrix, as I have been. And if you're a simple person like me, it is very easy to be addicted to the matrix, because you might say, well, look, okay. So you're going to sit there and say, oh, yeah, we can do this and that if we became spiritual human beings. We'll say, well, I don't particularly need to do that. I can use the matrix things. They serve me well, they're enough. I don't need to have those extra spiritual things. I don't need to even have more physical capabilities. As long as I'm healthy and can get the rewards of the matrix, I'm happy. You see, so there is that too. I could use examples of that, but like they might say, well, look, maybe you might be right, but quite frankly, I'm not willing to risk going onto the human side when the matrix serves me very well. The matrix gives me physical things that make me operate very well in this matrix world. I don't actually need or want or desire that much. Even some of the things that you're saying could be possibilities if you are at a higher vibration or become a real spiritual human being. See, that's a choice, and that's, like if you're given the best of the matrix, that can be just as tempting as offering a higher spiritual thing. Because don't forget, even technology can offer much. It can, and, technology can appear to be very magical, and like I was just thinking this the other day, and I've gone off track again, I'm so sorry. I see planes go over my house all the time, big jet planes, and they're impressive. Now, can you imagine if 100 years ago or 200 years ago I was standing in the same spot and I looked up and I saw an aeroplane go over? I would be like, wow, that's God, that's magic. Wouldn't I? If I saw that? Whereas now it's just like, oh, that's just the way we get round. That's technology. We're still impressed by it. We need it, but we don't see it as magic. But, technology can appear as magic, is what I'm saying. Because if it offers you more, in other words, in the future, it will probably appear to be so wonderful because it will appear like magic, because it will offer us things that we don't have now, just as the aeroplane would have appeared to be it would, like I said, if you don't have information and you just see things for what they are, and you will see things, you'll either see things very clearly or you'll see things in a different light to where you're like, wow, that is magic. But it's all kind of magic in a way, because it's just that you don't understand something. If something appears impressive and you don't understand it because the knowledge has been kept from you, you don't understand how things work, everything looks impressive. Everything looks spiritual even. And it looks, I don't know whether I've explained that. I don't think I've explained that well. No, I haven't done that very well. But I think that doesn't matter quite so much. But it might matter to some of you because you might be looking for something extra. But I think many would probably already, the few that listen to me already seem to have more insight into a lot of these things than myself. Even though all I offer is first-hand, I feel that I only am trying to offer, probably not successfully, offering first-hand contact with the reality, in the sense that, it's my experience, and, I believe it to be real, but I will elaborate on that, based on experience. So it's not like where I'm totally innocent. But like I say, I can imagine, because sometimes I just look at things and I say, yeah, I mean, gee, that seems very, you see something and you say, oh, gee, I'm getting a different vibration from that, You say, yeah, well, that's just how you see something. Like I say, 100 years ago, you'd see things that we see now as unbelievable. They would be godlike in what they can do. But it's only technology, really. But many people will see technology as more of a god and more impressive and more... they will say that is the real reality, because that is the most powerful, that is the most impressive. That's because as a human being, we are not able to do much at all. Like I say, and I was just making the point that some humans even maybe, like the swinging voter, they think that it's fine. They might, like myself, I'm a simple person, so therefore I could probably say, well, like, until I saw how negative things were. Because, see, there's a difference between a video